I request Mr. Feroz Khan to take over this session, please.
Hi, I'm there. So great. Thanks a lot. So I hope all of my panel member are there. So just a cross check whether all of so just a cross check all of the people. So Hemal, are you there?
Yes, sir. I'm right here.
And Raj?
Yes, Feroz, I'm there.
Suresh? Suresh, are you there? Okay, great. And Raghavendra? Raghavendra, have you joined in? I am not able to see Raghavendra over here. Okay, no worries. And Rajiv? Okay, great. So let me start it off. In interest of time, let me start this panel discussion. And good morning, everyone. In fact, if I see the tagline which talks about DX Samvaad, the silver lining of DX journey, I truly feel like DX Samvaad is a perfect tagline given to this panel discussion because if you see Samvaad,
We have it on mail.
hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Feroz, go ahead. I believe somebody was unmuted,
Okay.
so we can hear you loud and clear.
No worries. So in fact, if I see this tagline which talks about DX Samvaad, and if I just translate that to Hindi, Samvaad means conversation. And with me, I have a stellar panel member with me who will converse with me, who will share their perspective, who will share their views in the form of the topic conversation. And the topic remains the same like the digital transformation journey. So how do we really embark onto the digital transformation journey? So let me do one thing. Let me start with welcoming our guest on this as a panel member. So Hemal, we have Hemal, who is a regional CIO of Dell Technologies, and definitely I'm sure Hemal will share a lot of perspective in terms of the digital transformation, what Dell is doing, and how have they embarked onto this journey, and how are they really solving the problems which COVID has brought to them. Then we have Rajshri also, and Rajshri is head sales. Can others go on mute because there's some disturbance which is coming up. So the moment you speak, you can unmute yourself. Okay. So thanks. We have Raj, and Raj is head pre-sales from Tata Communication. Then we have Suresh Iyer, and Suresh is CIO of Blue Star Limited, and I understand that Blue Star is also doing a lot in terms of the digital transformation, and I'm sure like Suresh will share his perspective on this. Then Raghavendra, who is from Genpact, he's a vice president IT over there, and Genpact is one of the BPM market leaders. So obviously we'll learn a lot from him in terms of what is it which their clients are doing in terms of the digital transformation and the opportunities which has come from this COVID. And at last we have Rajiv Chawla. And Rajiv needs no introduction because he is a founder and chairman of Jairaj Group of Industries. And even he's a founder and chairman of the Integrated Association of MSME. And he's very active in the MSME forum. So welcome panel members, and thanks for taking time to join this. I'm sure the audience will get benefited from your views. Now, if I set the context, what I'll say is this: if I see nowadays the digital, so digital is such a word which is I'll say it's mostly used loosely in sense like it's the most loosely used word, and different people and different organization, they use digital in a different context. They use digital in a different purpose. If you ask me truly, to me, this topic is something which spans across different segment of the customer experience, be it new business model or be it emerging technologies or be it new ways of working or for that matter even the data and analytics, which is very important. So all of these components plays a role in terms of the digital transformation. And I'm sure that all of us are here are representing some organization or institutions. And then every organization and institution we talk about, no matter big, no matter small, everyone is facing some challenges. And these challenges, if you see, if you talk about the starting challenges, So these are the challenges which comes and spans across business. Like, organization keeps on talking about that. How do we increase revenue? How do we increase our, profit margin? How do we increase our EBITDA? So these are some of the, starting challenges, starting business problems. We talk about other things. So like, if we talk about other things, customer, like any organization you talk about, most of the organizations are struggling that how do we onboard customers, how do we create a different experience for the customer, the likes of the personalization, the likes of the loyalty. So these are some of the things which comes to almost all organizations to how do we tackle this problem. Then if we talk about the third problem statement, which can be related to productivity, so how to increase productivity in terms of efficiency, how do we really reduce the cost. So this can be a starting, challenge statement. There are problems related to people, like the ways of working. So how do we get onto a ways of working which is more collaborative in nature? How do we work onto a model which is remote in working? So there are many challenges, organization faces. Now the problem statement is this: yes, there are challenges, but then what is it which digital can contribute into this? What is it which digital can do into this? And my view is this: yes, digital can play a role, and it's playing a role. So if we talk about the true digital journey or the true digital transformation, any problem statement what I spoke about, generally digital will solve that. And just to name few, so the moment we talk about the business problem related to growth, yes, there are innovations, there are disruptions, that how do we really disrupt the market? How do we bring innovative products, and digitally we can solve this problem. If we talk about the technology, so if we have a legacy technology and we move on to more emerging tech, yes, digitally we can solve the problem, because then we can create an ecosystem which can sort of stitch everything together, and through a digital transformation lever, we can solve those problems. We can talk about data and analytics. So these days, data is everything. Now analytics plays a role in terms of solving the problem. So analytics is such a thing which will solve each and every problem in terms of the decision making. So it helps you take a quick decision, right decision, algorithm based decision. And last but not the least is about the people, the operating model. So truly feel like that, digital is going to play a role over there also. So when it comes to remote working, when it comes to work from home, when it comes to more collaborative way of working, yes, digital can play a role over there. So no matter whatever challenges, we are talking about, no matter whatever problem statement we are talking about, generally we'll see that digital is such a lever that is going to solve this problem. Now, in fact, I was just going through some analyst report, and there's a very interesting fact which has come up. And this fact is, it talks about, like, there are 25% of the companies in Fortune, 500 group, if I say, there are 25% of the companies which are still considered as a digital evangelist. That means they have reached an epitome, and they have really done a lot in terms of transformation, and they are the real gurus, if I say, in terms of the digital transformation. But then the next percentage, if I talk about, which is almost 25%, these are the people who have understood, these are the organizations who have understood the importance of digital, and either they have started doing something, or at least there's things which are in their pipeline. And then the balance 49%, if we say, these are considered to be true laggards, which means that neither they have understood the importance of the digital transformation, nor they have really done something concrete to it. So message over here is, there's a huge chunk, which is almost 50% of the chunk, wherein digital transformation can play a role over there. And this is true for different industry vertical. Yes, this may be a fact, like some of the industry vertical, they would be ahead and curve. Like, for example, if I talk about the likes of the TMT, which is telecom, media, and technology client, the likes of the financial services, yes, they are ahead in terms of the maturity curve. And there are others which are catching that particular curve. So industry to industry it differs, but broadly you will see that almost 49 to 50% of the enterprises, they are still struggling to mature in terms of the digital. No, let me connect the dots. So I started with a statement like, there's a business challenge, there's a business problem which is related to growth, and how do we really solve that? We solve that through disruptive, ideas, doing some innovations, changing our operating model and all. So In fact, this Samvaad, when I say this digital Samvaad or DX Samvaad, as a topic is going to address that. And I'm sure like each of you are going to share your views, your perspective, that how is it that it is helping the industry. So let me do one thing. Let me start with the industry vertical, which is ahead of the curve. So as I said, like TMT, which is telecom, media, and technology, they are ahead of the curve. So let me start with TMT, and with me over here we have Hemal, who comes from Dell, and Dell is one of the pioneers or one of the marquee example in terms of the technology company. And as we know this thing that yes, technology as a company, they have done enough in terms of the digital transformation. So let's pick the brain from Hemal, that to what extent really digital technology intervention has helped the organization in terms of the business requirement, and specifically given the COVID scenario, or the pandemic, which has forced the organization to reimagine or rethink in a different way. So Hemal, uh, can you share your perspective that how is it which has helped the organization, and then what is it which Dell has done in this regard?
Yeah, sure. Hey, so good morning, folks. So look, I mean, I would, I would probably characterize in the role of the CIO. Actually, it has made the business requirements of technology and digitization actually simpler. The good news is that I really don't need to sell it to my stakeholders, and my customers. When we, when we all saw, from a Dell perspective, we had a weekend to get 150,000 employees to be working from home, and it was a weekend. So there you go, right? So look, I mean, this has definitely opened our eyes, a lot of things in actually a very, very positive way, right? To try and give you a quick view, and going back to your point, thinking about it from our customers lens, right? I mean, what does your customer expect, out of you? They expect every business to be a technology business, right? So look, and a lot of the unorganized sectors are actually taking leaps and bounds, in these times. My vegetable wala and my fruit wala, and yes, I absolutely go and buy vegetables and fruits myself. He's on WhatsApp. Digitally, I say, here's what I want to buy. He says, here is a price. I say yes, and there you go, right? And it is so interesting that while these sectors have actually done wonderfully well embracing the digital technology. It's many of the small, medium, and large firms who actually have a huge role to play, right? Uh, Technology obviously will be the new norm. I mean, being digital, I think is the only way out. Like, when I was talking to my bank yesterday, I will not name the bank, but they said that, hey, in order to do the DD, you have to come to the bank and sign a form. And I'm like, that's probably not the bank that I really want to do business with, right? I'm sure most of you who hand your credit cards, over to petrol pump, the initial view is that, hey, look, should there be any of the touch, even though that is actually a pretty high digitized solution. So the charter towards the digitization is going higher and higher. There is no questions about it. It will be the forefront of actually, a lot of the firms. In fact, most of the companies, even to be able to do business. I think to us, it'll absolutely be a table stake. When we were trying to think about, things from a BCP scenario, earlier in our old worlds, it used to be a Word document, and there we go. We had, a really, really short time that all of us, had to, do our BCP plans. And I'm sure people who had a lot more deeper into the digital world, it was a lot simpler, right? I mean, and then the other thing is, yeah, when we think about it from the employee's perspective, look, I mean, the employees who work for your company, they expect to be a digital company. Your design language for all of your apps will change. The way you do your meeting, in fact, from my perspective, the company cultures will also change. many of I think all of you guys use the VC capabilities, right? In almost about a week span time, you saw like hundreds of percentages of things like zooming up to use all of the digital technologies. So hey, look, I mean, to me, it's really it's not an option. It is a survival, and your customers will absolutely demand it, if not your employees.
Great. So Hemal, you brought in a very good point. So in fact, I took some notes also of it. So you spoke about digitization, the new ways of working, and you gave a classical example of the ways even the vegetable and fruit wallahs have embarked onto a new mode of a business altogether, be it big or be it small. You even brought in a point which is the new ways of working and new ways of doing business, which is another important thing. And then you even spoke about the design language, which means that the entire experience is changing. And when we talk about design, it's basically for different personas, and all of these different personas, a different theme is there. You even brought in an important point like the company culture will also change. So these are very valid points in terms of the new digital themes which are emerging for the business, and these are the points which I truly feel are going to make change in the business. Now, the moment we talk about the new ways of doing business, the culture which you spoke about, the technology trend which you spoke about, then the obvious question which comes is this: that how will we measure that? Because these are the good points, but then it has to come to life. And how is it that we are going to sustain this, and how are we going to measure this? So let me pick, the ideas and brains from Raj. Like, what is it which Tata Communication is doing in this? Because as I said, that TMT as a vertical, like the telecom, media, and technology as a vertical, they are quite matured into this. And we heard Hemal share the perspective of Dell, which is a tech company, and he brought in so many points. So how is it like Tata Communication in terms of these points are really ensuring that the continued business and the performance measurements are coming as a work of the way? So this is obviously needs to be brought to life, and obviously there would be some areas which can really force the leaders to think about this. So, Raj, can you share your perspective? Like, what are those two, three areas wherein the business leaders they need to focus to bring that readiness, be it performance, be it new ways of working, or be it new business model? So, can you share your perspective on this?
Sure, Feroz. You know, from the morning itself, there were a lot of speakers who spoke about various things that they are doing. And I'll pick up a few areas which are coming up, which we help companies and enterprises to deploy. Starting from work from home, which Hemal talked about, in terms of talking about work from home is easy. Just saying that, hey, employee, connect on your broadband and hope for the best is not going to work. There are multiple things which come to play, starting from, say, for example, if Raghu has joined, then he can speak about the regulations that OSPs needs to meet, to the performance of the broadband itself, whether it's good enough. Because today, if you look at India, only 8% of Indians have good, stable broadband at home. 92% of Indians do not have good, stable broadband at home, which means that there has to be a method by which you can increase the performance of the existing broadband, rather than telling the employee that go fetch a new broadband from wherever you have to work productively. That's not what an employee is going to do. So security, performance, meeting regulations when it comes to work from home are the very few parameters which come into play, right? Then, if I then flip the coin and say that, okay, work from home is important, but then a lot of companies are going back to work. In that scenario, how would you look at contactless workplace? How technology is going to play a role in contactless workplace? if I look at manufacturing, phygital is going to be a big thing which is going to play a role in terms of, bringing human technology and physical machines and tools together. Uh, you know, and then collaboration is of course something that is big, and how collaboration is effectively used is a big question. And last but not the least, digitizing your sales cycle, right? Or digitizing your entire value chain, for example, and Hemal talked about his fruit vendor digitizing his sales from WhatsApp perspective. So if a fruit vendor can do it, enterprises need to do it, right? And since the topic of today is silver lining, let me speak about one quick example in terms of silver lining in an area which we think is going through a slump, and which is the food industry. Now, I don't know about you, but at least I have not ordered food for a long time now, right? And that's because I'm not sure whether the food it will be safe for me to from a COVID perspective or not. From that perspective, Swiggy in collaboration with Anka has it's a drone company, is launching drone based deliveries for food, right? And these kind of things is when you look at, say, what Andhra can do, or even what Asteria Aerospace is talking about in terms of it's a Reliance based backed drone startup. By the way, I also have a patent on drone, specifically in the drone navigation space. How those things can come together to deliver services in these times, thinking about digital and how digital can help you in the long run, and also in the midterm, to ensure that your business is running effectively, is something that people like us are constantly working with our customers, whether in terms of giving a point solution like work from home, which Hemal mentioned, or digitizing the entire value chain, so that we can ensure safety as well as productivity.
Yeah. So again, very insightful, Raj. I mean, a different perspective altogether, and that too coming from a networks and telecom company. Because a valid point. So like work from home, yes, and I'm too excited to hear the start. Like only 8% have a good and stable bandwidth. 92% are really struggling to this. This is a good insight. So now, how do we do that? Because yes, these are the challenges. These are the problem statements, but then equally work from home is important. You even spoke about performance, like no matter broadband or no matter any other thing, performance matters a lot. So how do we really make sure that the performance is there? And then the other important thing which I liked and taken a note of it is the contactless workplace, because this is going to be a new normal, and in fact all organizations are doing this. So another important thing. And thus, when I talk about contactless workplace, obviously the next question which comes to mind is the collaboration which you spoke about, and you highlighted that collaboration would be important for this. Digitization of the entire value chain you spoke about, and the best thing which I loved hearing from you is the drone-based deliveries, which is altogether a new experience. So good to hear that so many things which are coming, as an offering, and this sorts of forced me to think that when we talk about these type of deliveries, which is altogether a different experience, when we talk about the collaboration, when we talk about the contactless workplace, so this is not only for an employee or not only for I'll say a customer. Instead, this is for the entire value chain. Instead, I'll use this word as 360-degree. Okay, so this is for the 360-degree circle for everyone. So be it employee, be it customer, be it partner, be it vendor, for everyone, this experience, this collaboration needs to be there. So let me go to Suresh, because Suresh, you come from an industry which has its manufacturing as well as primary and secondary sales. Now, since you have levers, which is wherein you produce, since you have levers wherein you trade, you have levers wherein you sell, you have levers wherein you service, so a full 360-degree. Now, to if I have to ask you, Suresh, like what are some of the major opportunities which you see So I'm using the word opportunity. What are the major opportunities which you see, which COVID has brought in? So generally, people see COVID as a challenging and the risk phase because that's what it has brought in. But then there are people, and even I'll say government is even telling this thing and promoting this thing that this can be termed as an opportunity also. So Suresh, like, what do you think are the major opportunities which this pandemic has brought in terms of the digital evolution, and that too, speaking about 360-degree, means not only employee, not only your customers, but customers, partners, employees, vendors, everyone. So what's your perspective on this, Suresh?
Sure. You can hear me, right?
Yeah, loud and clear.
First of all, good morning to all you. And I hope I'm not part of that 92% which Raj mentioned. So in case my internet connection is unstable, you may have some glitches. Apologies in advance for that. Um, Feroz, thanks for that question. I think it is a very relevant question for us, especially considering the ecosystem which we are in. We work extensively with dealers and distributors, modern trade on one side. We got customers, pan-India, residential and commercial on one side. We got technicians who are pan-India. There are some 8,000 of them at any point in time. We got employees pan-India and international as well. So all in all, quite an interesting, Belpuri of ecosystem partners, I would say. Second thing is, I would say that a challenge for business becomes an opportunity for digital. Okay. And today, one of the fundamental things which we are seeing is we are seeing two effects of this. One is we had invested in a lot of technologies over the last 5 years. And one key area which IT used to always try to or used to struggle with is the adoption of those technologies. Now, one interesting fallout which we are seeing is these technologies which we have invested or implemented in the last few years has never seen so much usage as in the last 3 months. All of it has come to fruition and we have been able to leverage it fully. I'll explain which of these are in a bit. The second area is related to the changing world around us. Thanks to all these issues related to restrictions in travel, both due to cost as well as safety, a lot of new things had to be, or a lot of things had to be reimagined literally. Okay. So we sat about thinking about what could be the changes in our world in another few weeks once the lockdown was released, and an interesting set of aspects came out. We had 4 weeks to do a few things because that's when the lockdown was to be lifted. First thing was our e-commerce site. I'm not sure how many of you realize this, but e-commerce sales of air conditioners are very, very low. In fact, less than a 1 percentage point, I would say. And that was never a focus area for us, but we were working on our e-commerce site and we were planning to release it sometime later this year, somewhere around July, August timeframe. But that was the first thing which we accelerated. And we actually went live with with that site on May 1st. And we were surprised to see the volume of transactions which took place. In fact, it was a booster for us. The fact that we were able to have something like this released in double quick time, and the fact that we are able to generate sales through this. The second thing is our dealers are sitting pan India, especially the ones on the sales side. And if you know, government was releasing your red, green, and amber zones pretty much daily, and there was always a confusion between what was red, green, and amber depending upon how the state interpreted it. So what we did is we came out with our own logic because we needed much more than that. Because even if a dealer was sitting in a red zone, we didn't know whether he would be shut or open. There is a possibility he could be remaining open. So we would not know if there is an untapped opportunity there. This information was important for us in order to spread our inventories across those dealers and also track their sales and spread our targets accordingly. We came out with a very simple dashboard which was integrated with a dealer management system. So the dealer would flag off who was open or closed on a daily basis. That information was then used by a sales team in that dashboard to track how much sales could be funneled into that guy or diverted to some other person. We not only tracked the dealers through this and therefore the sales through this, we also managed to embed our warehouses into this because the warehouse was the second point where a containment zone could be a problem for us. So the sales guy had complete visibility, the dealer had complete visibility in terms of whether a shipment was going to be delivered to him or did we have to switch the warehouse to him or do an alternative mode of shipment. This has enabled the sales guy to be absolutely accurate. In fact, it's almost 99% accurate in terms of his sales. He's able to ensure that he can actually predict what his sales in a given month is going to be because he's got this visibility of who is open and who is not. This dashboard is currently so widely used that we consider it to be one of the most important dashboards for us. Then we had another example, which is on the service side. you spoke about customers. We have the technicians also who service these customers. Thanks to COVID, travel was restricted. Only essential services were on. We had invested 2 years back in a remote monitoring solution where we had enabled 500 customers. Their chillers were enabled through a remote monitoring platform. It was very sparingly used and only for certain of them. But thanks to this, because technicians could no longer visit the sites, or we really didn't want them to travel unless absolutely necessary, we actually leveraged this remote monitoring solution to its fullest. Out of the 500 sites, nearly 50% were in the essential services zone, and our first level of intervention was through the remote monitoring platform. In fact, most of the problems could be resolved through that, and therefore we really didn't even have to send a technician across. Only when the part had to be changed or where we felt there was something which required a local presence, that's the only occasion where we needed to send somebody. We also brought in a digital intervention where we anticipated our customers may want us to tell them whether our technicians were safe from health perspective or not before they visited. So we introduced an intervention where a technician would log in a health checks, which would be checked by the dealer, and only if the technician was safe or he had declared himself green would a call get assigned to him. So the technology itself prevented a technician from being assigned anything which we considered to be unsafe for our customers. Then we have on the manufacturing front, we have invested in an IoT solution which actually automated all our factories. We could see what was happening in the factories in all those machines at any point in time from anywhere. This solution proved to be of immense use because we did have certain factories working, but with limited presence. Okay, and you had to make a call as to who could be present and who couldn't be present. But thanks to this solution providing management level visibility, we could restrict the number of people to the bare minimum. Only those people who really need to
Awesome.
were needed, while the rest, especially the management, they could be sitting at home and monitoring the situation without any issues. That solution was 100% utilized in the last few weeks, and that was amazing. Then the fourth place of intervention was again from an employee standpoint. Our employee engagement was typically through work conversations, through mails, pretty much happening on the face-to-face front. But here we were having a situation where employees were sitting at home and HR couldn't really talk to them or even see them. So we developed a number of engagement related interventions which allowed the employees and HR and management to stay in touch with each other and ensure that everybody was kept up to date as to what was happening. In fact, that particular solution has become the number one platform for us for employee engagement, and that happened in 4 weeks. And the last place, this is one of my best examples of how an environment or a business environment can change rapidly is, I'm sure all of you know, Salesforce automation solutions are very useful but very rarely used. It is one of the toughest challenges to get salespeople to use it. We actually deployed a solution for one of our divisions for over 200 salespeople in 3 weeks, and day one, 100% usage. We are currently on the third week of usage, and we are seeing 100% usage even now, which is phenomenal. And I believe it has happened because of the simple fact that you are no longer face to face, you are no longer able to track things through Excel and mails. You really need digital solutions to help you, and that is where we believe that now it is all going to become business led digital rather than digital leading digital, and that is a big change for us. So I got many more examples, but in the interest of time, I'll pause here.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Suresh. And in fact, again, wonderful ideas which came in, and I'm sure a lot of other organizations and audience will benefit from this because almost you have covered the entire ecosystem. You spoke about about employees. The best thing what you spoke about the remote monitoring platform, which is another great thing which I heard. You even gave an example of e-commerce, that how did you bring that in such a short time. And the unique thing which I heard from you is the Salesforce automation. I agree that Salesforce automation is the most tedious work because these people, they never use it. So very innovative idea that in 3 weeks time you could bring that to live. And the way spoke about the dashboard, the integration of the warehouse and the other ecosystem. These are the true digital levers. These are the levers which are not only limited till the strategy or transformation, but these are the real levers which comes to life. So definitely, people would love, from this. And the most important thing, Suresh, which I heard is, I don't know whether I'll share, I should share or not, but the bhelpuri of the ecosystem. So very quite amazing. So when I blend all these things together, yeah, it becomes a bhelpuri. So rightly, used this word. And The challenge is, which you have rightly pointed out, is this, that no matter we talk about so many things, but how will the adoption happen? And specifically, the adoption has to be linked to a 2 by 2 matrix, which even talks about the value proposition, which means the time to market has to reduce. There's no point doing a digital which take ages. There's no point doing something which will be waterfall and takes 2 years time. So how do we really bring that to life? That's very important. And you have correctly put it. And I'm sure the audience will get benefited, and the fellow panel members will get benefited from these things. So now let me shift to Raghavendra, who is from Genpact, and want to hear from BPM perspective, because see, up till now what we heard is this: yes, as an organization, as an
Sorry to interrupt, Feroz. Raghavendra has not joined. He has got some issues, some personal issues. Probably he's
no
not
worries.
able to join.
No worries, no worries. So, but still, I'll share this perspective. So, I'll only share this. No worries. So what I'm coming from is this: ki no matter we heard the different client, perspective, we heard different organization perspective, but when it comes to a company like a Genpact, which is primarily a BPM. So for a BPM company which handles multiple industry vertical, multiple types of the problem, so how is it that they are solving the problem? And I'm sure all of the BPMs would be facing this these issues, because these are the things which comes to life, and all of these organizations, they really want to bring and spearhead this digital journey. And these BPM companies, they bring in a platform to reduce that time to market. So when Suresh was talking about the time to market reduction, that how do you bring live in 3 weeks, how do you make sure that the adoption happens? So there I truly feel like that the platforms which the BPM companies have, that plays a role. We wish that Raghavendra would have been there, so you would have shared that how is it that the BPM companies are handling for different client perspective and different industry vertical perspective. But definitely these platforms help a lot, because we need to ensure that the time to market has to be sort of an crunched. Then this brings me to another important thought process. Like we are all talking about big enterprise, or the more structured and organized enterprise or institutions. And since we have Rajiv over here, and Rajiv is one of the figure who is very closely associated to the MSME field. So let me turn my question to Rajiv, and let me understand from Rajiv that what do you think are the various I'll say the digital levers which categorically MSME uses? Because big companies, we heard Hemal, we heard Raj, we heard Suresh, there are different things which all of these organizations have done. But when it comes to MSME, which has their own challenges, own problems, so what's your view that what is it which these companies are using in terms of the digital layers? And really, has it helped them when it comes to the business enablement? Have you seen like these technologies have really given them some sort of an help in terms of the business maybe processing, or productivity, or optimizations, or something like that? So Rajiv, would like to hear from you that what's your view in MSME perspective on this?
Yeah, good afternoon, Mr. Feroz. It's a pleasure to be with everyone. I must admit that technology or IT, integrating that into a small business is one of the biggest transformations that is required, and was always there, and yet it was the toughest thing for us to do. The main reason is that it's almost like to change the culture of an organization, including the entrepreneur himself or herself. Because typically MSMEs are one entrepreneur based or one family based institutions and organizations. And unless they understand, unless they can use, unless they see the significance, their investments or their own indulgence does not come. And this has been a typical challenge. Second thing that we've already noticed is that normally, whenever these challenges were presented to us, the solutions were presented to us over the last 10 years, every time I thought, and I speak this from my personal experience as well, that these solutions are actually made for large corporates. And it is just that now they are presenting the same to us. So most of the ERP solutions, for example, were too bulky, too difficult to implement and understand. And when I say implement and understand, not just by the entrepreneur himself, but by the small team, if an SME would have, it's very difficult to retrain those people. And if one person would leave in that chain, once again, the entire ERP implementation would collapse. Individually, even I am struggling for the last 10 years because every time there is one station person that moves away, it's difficult to bring in new people with the same level. And if some data is not plugged in for a particular period, then that data is lost. And then the entire system becomes, haywire. So my first call would be that, yes, of course, it is required by every SME. And so therefore, many of these solutions need to be customized for MSME because none of these solutions were actually created for MSMEs. So I think the creators, the innovators, the people who develop, the people who ultimately look at the market, they did all this keeping corporates in mind, large banks in mind, large institutions in mind. And if you try to thrust the same solutions to an MSME, MSME would be shy of investing. This is one. Second thing is that MSMEs are too diverse. By the last count, the government said that India has about 63 million MSMEs. Now, these could be divided into various categories: the manufacturing, the services, and the trading. Now, their requirements of digitalization would be entirely different. And most of the manufacturing requirements are different than the trading requirements and that of the service requirements. There are many service sector MSMEs that have adopted various solutions since their inception. For example, someone in travel tourism business, someone in let us say ERP sales business, someone in many other accounting, the GST, the online things, service support organizations that are providing this kind of support. They already moved towards digitalization, and many of those solutions were there. But for manufacturing, and I especially talk about the MSME manufacturers, I believe that their solutions are too wide, too diverse, too bulky, and therefore the implementation level is barely minimal. Only some of the large, good organized SMEs, which are in the supply chain of very large OEMs and institutions, they could, large OEMs would handhold them and help them digitalize. Yet I believe that this COVID situation is like the second innings. The first innings is now over. It is now the second innings. And incidentally, between the first innings and the second innings, there was rain. So the wicket conditions have changed, the ground conditions have changed. Maybe in the previous innings, it was the pace ball which was doing the magic. Now it could be spin, that could do. So conditions have dramatically changed. First innings gave us two things: experience and resources. So some of us have better resources because of their previous business practices and business markets. But the second innings, not guaranteeing that whatever I did in first innings would be replicated. So previous success is no guarantee for success at this stage. Two very critical things, and SMEs are realizing today, are required to be as successful in the second innings. One is what I call technology, and you can call it digitalization. You could call it by any name. And second very important thing is innovation. And therefore, even MSMEs today are realizing that without technology, that is digitalization, and without the innovation, creating their own different models, it would be very challenging for them in post-COVID scenario, or you can say in the COVID scenario, which is there for a long, long time. Maybe in my lifetime, this scenario continues like that. So ground conditions have changed forever. And therefore, right from, let's say, if I talk about the manufacturing MSMEs, right from their quality practices implementation, their ISO and their other certification implementation, the ERP implementation, even the machinery maintenance, the OE calculation, and many other productivity calculation things, everything needs to be digitalized. Because, of course, we need people there. Manufacturing is something, unless someone is in totally integrated industry 4.0, which as yet is a distant dream for Indian MSMEs, I believe that simple, smaller steps to monitor each machine. There are some simpler digital solutions available nowadays, and those need to be very, very affordable. If I remind us all, it's almost the same scenario when mobile phones were first introduced in India. And a typical mobile phone 20 years back would cost 50,000 rupees. And you can do, what 50,000 20 years back would mean today. And 16 rupees a minute per call. So from that stage to the era of telecommunication that we are in today, with very large telecom companies now giving free telephony and hardly any, and very, very affordable. I think this is what every IT solution, digital solution provider must think. The minute you think that, yes, these 63 million enterprises in India are my market, you become a company like Tally. And that's extremely important. So very large, very complex ERPs that have been created. I believe that the minute they look at, refocus themselves at this new market, they need to simplify some of those solutions. So I would just, because I can go on and on, point is that, yes, MSMEs are realizing that nothing is possible without digitalization. Even a bank loan today has to be digitally applied for. Fintech companies are there giving their apps, and on the touch of an app, it is expected that the loans would start forthcoming very soon with the CIBIL and the other data, the credit history, all integrated. PSB loans in 59minutes.com is yet another attempt. Similarly, the payment recovery mechanism, there is a Samadhan portal now. So a small enterprise knows that if a payment gets stuck, where to go. The GEMS portal, which is a huge marketplace for the government purchases, and where 25% of the purchases are reserved only for the micro and small. So MSMEs have to gear up. They have to understand the working of the GEMS portal, and it is only there that they can apply for tenders and give their bids and compete with each other. So the world has changed right from their marketplace. If you look at the Flipkart and the Amazons of the world, you'll realize that they're 95% or maybe even more a number of buyers and sellers are from the MSME segment, small entrepreneurs who are using those digital platforms. Similarly, every government thing in the last 10 years we've seen has slowly moved online. So from TDS, TCS, GST payments, income tax payments, everything is digital. So I believe that this digitalization drive has, actually started many, many years back. But when it comes to the operations or the systems of a manufacturing MSME, typically, that is where the huge gap remains. The barcode system may not be implemented. The documentation management is another area that they're looking at. Simple ERP solutions connected with some artificial intelligence that guides an entrepreneur like a chartered accountant. How I wish my ERP acts like a digital chartered accountant. Who, when my ERP can correct me if I forget to deduct TDS, let's say from some payment. So I believe, yes, the market is there. Yes, the requirement is there. Yes, people have woken up. And lastly, even government, state governments as well as central government, they are supporting digitalization. For example, I know, as I am SME of India, in many regions, we are providing support up to 3 lakh rupees to MSMEs so that they move to cloud ERP. Now, it is just that the cloud ERP solutions today, which are available, are so complex that even though I am willing to pay 3 lakh rupees to them so that for 2 years they remain, they start working in the cloud ERP system. Many MSMEs are still avoiding. So I believe it is understanding, by the solution providers that the market remains, support system remains, and how now virtual exhibitions, virtual marketplaces, the banking, the fintech, the quality, the integration, communication, of course, the way we are doing now, all that reaches out to the last. And the sooner they do this, the way telecom sector changed itself from 16 rupee a minute to free telephony, it's all about, coming together.
So great point, Rajiv, and very, it's rare that we get perspective of MSME, which you have rightly pointed out. And in fact, I have taken a lot of notes of what you were telling, because generally we hear a lot on enterprise and the big corporates, but then we don't get a view on MSME, which is very important, because I truly feel like, as you rightly pointed out, that there are 63 million MSME in India. And not only this 63 million, I generally translate this 63 million to 120 million jobs which it creates in the market. I translate this to a 40% manufacturing output growth which it contributes to the GDP of India. So definitely this is one of the backbone, and this is one lot which has not been thought through in terms of the digitization. I took your point, and it's a valid suggestion that yes, most of the digital products, or the digitization for that matter, if I call upon, that's been focused around the large and the big corporates, and MSME, it has not been designed for MSME, although we try to retrofit it. So that's something which is the need of the hour, that how do we design this categorically for the MSME so that it's more agile, more nimble, and quick to work, and obviously it has to be cost effective also. You in fact spoke about like there has to be a different experience, the affordability has to be there. You gave a very right analogy about that cricket, so I love that, the first inning and second inning thing. Like the first inning you spoke about the experience, the experience and the resources. The second one which you spoke about is the replication, that how do we really take this to market on a very replicated manner. So that's another thing. And as you rightly said, that we are coming from an old age, and there's a lot which has already happened. So how do we really empower this in terms of the technology, in terms of innovation? Because the good part, what I heard from you is this: yes, there's a pull, yes, there's something which people want to adopt, digitization and technology. People want to adopt innovation, and you have correctly pointed out that also, that yes, as an association, there's a lot which is happening. I do know that the credit guarantee scheme which government has bought in, wherein we are telling people to get onto the technology platform, get onto the digitization, that is specifically for this purpose. So very, very valid point. And as you said that COVID has brought in a lot of opportunities, that how do we cultivate these ideas and innovations to this. So really, I'm sure this is going to help a lot in terms of the processes which has to be defined for small and medium. So that's a great input to hear from you, Rajiv. Now let me give it a different perspective, that yes, we all heard different panel members, starting from big corporates to the likes of the TMT world, to MSME. We heard that what all are the different initiatives and the digital which are happening in different industry vertical, and how it is reshaping and reimagining the world. Now, specifically last 3-4 months since COVID came in, what we saw is this: ki no matter whatever digital we are talking about, there's a new operating model which has got emerged up. And this new operating model, if you see, is primarily the likes of the remote working, or the likes of the work from home, and how do we collaborate, how do we really work together. So these are the things which has come in last 3-4 months time. Now what I truly feel is this: the end of the day, if you study these are the things which are forcing you to think in different trends. And if I have to talk about this trend, so trend can be as good as globalization. So now all of the work what we see, be it the bigs and be it the small, most of the work which you see, it's just acting like a giant city. No matter what language I speak, no matter what currency I transact, no matter whether I'm there at Jaipur or I'm there at Faridabad or I'm there at some, south, doesn't matter. What matters is this: do you have that talent? Do you have that operating model to collaborate and work? That's the new norm which has come up. There are trends, like if I talk about trends like a millennial thinking, there are data points which tells that by year 2020 end, globally the millennials population would be close to 50%. And if I take this and extrapolate this to year 2025, this will go till 75%. Now think about the way these millennials work. These people, their thought process is this: they no more go for a work. Instead, they carry work with them. So they carry work in their pocket, which means the remote working, which means the work from home. So no more like people are going to work and doing the work. It's basically you take your work along with you. That's the new thinking which has come. If we talk about the other trend, like the new behavior, there are different type of emerging behavior which is coming up. And this behavior, if you see now, most of the people, if you talk about, and again here also there's no segregation between the corporates and the smaller one, but the behavior, the trend is like this: ki we love to express our views on Facebook, we love to express our professional affiliation to LinkedIn, we love to collaborate in a or share views on Twitter. That means we are becoming more and more social. It's more like how do you collaborate. It's more like the ways which we used to work in terms of the working model, in terms of the communication, in terms of the collaboration. All this has changed. All this has changed, and given COVID, this has changed drastically. That's a another trend which I'm seeing now. Now the important thing which I want to highlight is this: all these trends are okay, but when it gets translated to technology, there are various technologies which are enabling these trends to work, like the likes of the big data platform, wherein we can do sentimental analysis, wherein we can do behavioral pattern analysis, that the likes of the variables, wherein we can track, wherein we know where that person is, wherein we can do our sales, wherein we are monitor our sales and processing. That's the another technology which has come. The likes of the different tools which works more in a collaborated way. So obviously technology is helping, and technology is redefining this entire thing. And thus my thinking is like these are the some of the topics, these are some of the thought process which has forced people to think that it's no more like you are forced to work. It's like it's your choice, and you want to get that freedom to collaborate in a different way. And specifically COVID, specifically I'm using stressing onto this word, that specifically COVID, if you see, this thing has come to life. So in last 3 months, I think rarely people would have gone to office, but still work is happening. So still people are working. Now the question comes is this, and that's what I want to hear from you people. That's what I want to get your perspective. And let me start with Hemal only, because Dell, I'm sure they have more than 100,000 people. So with such a large volume, how do you really manage this? So Hemal, let me ask you this thing, that since you come from Dell, so more than 100,000 people working, such a large workforce. So what do you think are the 2 3 common or main digital levers which this new millennial and new behavioral think tank, or maybe the workforce, they need to work upon, or they need to adopt, because they have a different mindset. So let's hear from you, that what is it which Dell has done, and what do you think are these different thought process for the new generation?
Yeah, hey, so look, I mean, my high level, look, we all know millennials a lot more digital savvy. My son kicks me in the rear when it comes to video games and all that stuff. So, although I thought I was actually a much better gamer, but look, digital savviness, absolutely yes. I'll just give you 3 points from my example, like just in the past month and a half, right? We onboarded a bunch of interns, a bunch of new joinees, all coming from universities. The 3 things that just jumped in my mind, very specific to the millennials and the COVID situation. So the first one was um, it's really, you know, and this also touches back on the point that Suresh and Rajiv made, right? It's back to the culture. It's what are the leaders doing to ensure that the new joinees are easily bootstrapped into the company's culture and into the company. They are joining. You've never seen them. They have never seen you. There's a good chance they will not make into the into even the physical office for many months, right? They have a laptop. They have the VC tools, and that's pretty much about it, right? So in that world, you know, the onus is actually a lot more to the leadership. Is how do you get them bootstrap much faster into the organizations? You don't have the tea break, you know, you don't have the face-to-face meetings, which you will not have at least until the foreseeable future, right? So that's one. Second thing is, you know, we're all seeing that, you know, from an e-learning market, the market will absolutely explode. Probably that's, you know, in the global things, you know, along with the travel and tourism, I think the e-learning market will be one of them, which will be poised for the biggest change. Now, the one interesting things that we are seeing, at least I am seeing with the millennia, is although they are digitally savvy, they are still actually not very much entrenched with the e-learning market, right? So don't assume that since you know, these people are digitally savvy, e-learning will come by default. You know, there is still, you know, will require actually a push on their side to actually, you know, ensure that they are good with newer types of learning. The third one, which I firmly believe that is the most important thing, is uh, it will need the millennials to be a lot more hungrier, to be a lot more curious. If you relate this to the old days in which, especially in the multinational firms, you know, you had the headquarters, which was not in India, things were offshore, you know, which was, you know, a bad, you know, which is a bad word now, but people here, you know, would think that, hey, look, we are not a part of the larger population. We may not, you know what is going on, and people had to do a lot more work. And people who rose and shone, they actually did a lot more proactive work to ensure that they are part of the global workforce. That paradigm with everybody working from home actually puts the onus, regardless of wherever in the geography you are. It is up to the millennials to actually be a lot more hungrier and a lot more curious. And if they don't, I mean, they have to jump in a lot more on those skills to ensure that they have a bright future.
Great. So, the best thing what I liked, Hemal, is this that so many people, the new workforce, they have joined and they are joining, and for next couple of months, they are not going to meet physically with each other, and all remote working will happen, which is very true. And this I was just thinking about while you were telling that this correlates with the analogy what Raj was talking from network's perspective, the 8% and 92% model. So, Raj, let me hear from you the same analogy, the 8 and 92% thing. How will you really measure it? How will you? So in this case, when such a large workforce is there, how is it that you are going to measure this? How will you really measure the performance? Because we are talking about remote, we are talking about different tech enablement, we are talking about work from home, and we are talking about like people will not meet each other for multiple months. But then what is the way to measure it? What is the way to see the productivity? So what is it which you do for this?
Sure. Feroz, great question, and now I'll also take some segue from what Mr. Suresh and Mr. Rajiv mentioned some time back. So, when you think about the 92% people who do not have good broadband at home, uh, it's because the broadband is from, say, a local cable operator who has not bought the right routes from an internet perspective, right? So your applications, even if you're an MSME, as Mr. Rajiv said, and it's sitting on the cloud, or if you're a blue star and you have a good data center and some cloud practice per se, what would happen is that you're not able to reach that properly, and therefore your productivity is majorly hit, right? from that perspective, we, if you think about the new network, what you hear from the market, in terms of SD-WAN and so on and so forth. SD-WAN is a good technology when it comes to large enterprises, deployment in large offices per se. As Mr. Rajiv mentioned, it cannot be true for an office which has 2 employees, for example, or you can't think about deploying SD-WAN at home, right? That's where we have actually come out with a patented, our homegrown patented technology, which we call as NetFoundry, which can increase your broadband speed by 10 times. We've also tested it on VSAT, where it increases the performance by 29 times. The good news is that when you talk about performance, if there is an employee who's saying that his applications are not working, you can actually do a test from remote also to see whether that's really the case, whether the network is not working or not. That's specifically from work from home perspective. Now, when it comes to Office, and I touched upon how contactless can work. Again, going back to what Mr. Suresh said, if you're thinking about how would you implement social distancing per se, in the office, you can do it through IoT. And again, we have done it with an organization where by implementing IoT on the iCards, we can enforce a specific distance between 2 individuals. Now, all these are directly related to productivity and performance, because if you fall sick, your productivity will be hit. If your broadband is not working properly, your productivity is going to be hit. Again, Mr. Suresh mentioned about AC sales per se. Now, specifically from an e-commerce perspective, there is white goods do not sell that much, right? People, at least I still prefer to go to a retail showroom to see a product, even if I know that it's a dummy product. I want to see the product, talk to an individual, and then buy. We are actually helping a retail organization to change their entire sales cycle on digital by understanding what are the steps they do, what is a day in the life, and changing specific steps to digital while ensuring that the customer, like me, will have the same personal touch while not having, not going through that physical touch, right? So, from a technology perspective, we are doing much more than telecom. Telecom is just an underlying core for us. We are talking about use cases in terms of understanding how specific organizations are trying to do things and solving them through either we are very big in innovation, and I talked about a few patents. I've got patents on robotic process automation, drones. We talked about internet, where we can increase the speed of broadband, any broadband, by 5 to 10 times. Those are the things which will increase productivity by for organizations and employees. That's how you can also have Hemal's new joinees, work very productively per se, without thinking about which broadband do I use, or if I use a hotspot, whether it's going to work.
So good. So I think good analogy, and you have linked it very well with Hemal's point of view, which came more from the the big workforce and the levers which the young force, like the millennial thought process, is coming on. So let me go to Suresh. And Suresh, let me pick your brains that in this remote working, first thing is this, you heard Hemal, you heard Raj talking about different levers. How do we really use this in the form of the remote working? So what do you think are the areas which I'll say people and human both gets mixed for an increased digital usage? So in specifically in this remote working, so what's your view in this?
Good question, and I'm struggling for an answer. Let me put it like this. I think because, first of all, we had the lockdown which started March 20th, if I'm not mistaken, right? And luckily for us, IT for once had predicted this lockdown to happen, although it did happen a few days earlier than what we envisaged, but we were ready for it, okay? And that actually took our business by surprise, number one. we had actually enabled all our applications, almost all our applications, including the most difficult ones such as your design, your CAD, computer aided design software, which was used by both our R&D and project engineers. We had actually got everything at a point where we could use it from home. Okay. In fact, we also went to the extent of shipping out laptops at the nth hour to those people who were using workstations and making sure that they could still operate or do their designs from home. I think that was a very pleasant surprise to our business, first of all, that we were ready, number one. Number two, post the lockdown, I think business started understanding that nothing had stopped. It was a fundamental shift in their thinking that here we have automated so many of this, now we are actually putting it to use. And that actually went a long way in making sure that, businesses understood the value of IT, number one. As I had mentioned earlier, post that one of the other things which has happened is IT itself has reinvented itself. I would say in the last 8 weeks, we have delivered solutions faster. The speed of delivery has never been this fast. We have reduced the cost of each application to a fraction. In fact, we have also been surprised at the level of leverage which we have been able to get. And I don't think we have done so much with so much less money, and that has also taken everybody by surprise. But the third most important part of what IT has done differently is we are delivering solutions that actually solve one particular problem or one or more particular problems which they are facing today. I think that is the area which has resulted in a lot of things coming to the fore, and the fact that things are not going to be the same anymore. Businesses are going to reinvent how they do business with each other or with residential customers or retail customers. They have to rethink every part of their business. I'll give you one simple example. Printer used to be a white elephant, and it's still a white elephant in all organizations. People used to think printer was the next best thing to digitalization. And every time a printer goes down, especially in an organization such as ours, with 75 years old, everything was reached on the printer. And we used to run around trying to help them fix it or get it addressed. But the lockdown has resulted in literally no printing happening. Most of it is now being done digitally. And the fact that all of this was readily available actually made them understand that many of the things which they were literally doing were more because they were used to doing it in a certain way and they no longer need to do it. That plus the fact that the businesses themselves have to rethink how they are doing things and how do they deal with the new situations which are coming up. One simple example, there is no more field level sales calls. Any company is not going to just allow a sales guy to come in just like that. I mean, may have to go through certain safety checks. You may have to really have a real strong reason. So how do I deal with this remotely? So we are trying to enable that conversation with that customer in certain ways where everything can happen virtually, including how we help them walk through our products. You're looking at augmented reality, for example, here. How can I demo a product which is typically as I think it was Raj or somebody mentioned that I think it was Raj, that it's a touch and feel. You will not buy something like that by reading about it or online. You have to feel it. So we are trying to get that experience across to them as well. So a lot of interesting such use cases have emerged, but more importantly, I think the fundamental shift to this whole thing is the businesses have started talking to us much more, and that is used to never happen. Previously, it was business giving a problem to IT and say, go solve it. And when we come back with a solution, they would find it hard to adopt. But today, it's a much more collaborative, iterative process. And we have been able to deploy design thinking as a methodology. We have been able to use agile practices. So all of it is resulting in a collaboration and actually enabling the business to start thinking about more and more ways where they can digitize a lot of their normal stuff. So the application stack which I have today is tremendous. I mean, I've got opportunities all over the place. The challenge which I have is prioritization. So I don't think I think everything has changed. This is going to be the year of digital, frankly, because business has finally realized that digital is in, and it's going to be business-led digital and not IT-led digital.
Great. So year of digital, great point. So this definitely, even I also truly feel that this would be year of digital and doing it right. Yeah, doing it right.
Feroz, just sorry, but just one more point. See, I
Yeah.
think this is because there's also a platform for MSMEs, right? I think what we have done in the last 2 months has proved that we can deliver very good solutions and more complex solutions at a fraction of the cost in a fraction of the time. And I think that's good news, because we no longer have to think about long cycles of implementation, a huge expenditure. Even the cost of maintenance is not that high. So actually, I think we have got a good formula going here, and which is MSMEs can literally think about how they can leverage it.
Great. So that's a very good news, because in fact, Rajiv is also there. And since you spoke about the year of digital, you spoke about the prioritization, and then you link this to the MSME. So in interest of time, let me go with the last, question, which I have with Rajiv. And Rajiv, so I know, and we all know that MSME are stressed out due to COVID, due under various circumstances. Now, we all are talking about different remote working models, different prioritization, different performance, and in fact, Suresh brought in a point that at least companies have started thinking from MSME perspective. So, what, as per you, are the real options available for MSMEs for the remote working? Big companies, yes, they have many things, but MSMEs, what do you think are the real, options available to them? Rajiv, I think you are speaking on mute.
Right. When we talk about MSMEs, typically we are talking about small enterprises working with limited number of people, and that is something that we understand. And work from home is a concept normally for very large organizations with very large workforce, and because they need to have some tools also to monitor the work that is done from home. So with sudden COVID lockdown coming in, MSMEs were never prepared for this kind of a thing. So over a period of time, remaining within the lockdown with whatever access they had at hand, they started using those. For example, we started using video conferencing, and we would do video conferencing with our people. Fortunately, in my organization, we already have ERP implementation, though partially, and we still struggle with its implementation. And so there is something to work upon. A manufacturing MSME can only plan its raw materials or something else, or typically only the financial aspects could be done digitally. But post opening of the lockdown, MSMEs are really looking at these solutions which are available around. And right from basic packaging, induction of, let us say, barcoding, and some other things like very, very small things, more small steps in digitalization, from packaging to dispatches to invoicing, and many of these things which are already there. But work from home, of course, can be done by, let us say, marketing department. It could be done by most of our ESI, Provident Fund, payroll. These things are now done digitally. So it's a question of, there's some low-hanging fruits. Yeah. Those low-hanging fruits technologies are available around, and people are using that. So the work that can be done from home is being done from home. And I don't know how long it will continue. But then our point now is how to integrate a manufacturing shop floor also into this kind of a thing, having virtual supervisors, people who are virtually monitoring the maintenance of machines, that is the Industry 4.0, if we are looking at. So I think it's a mixed experience, and those in services, of course, are doing it. One more aspect I should mention, that even a small restaurant today is facing a challenge of customers coming there. So even that small restaurant is trying to use digital technology where the customers can place order, and from Swiggy or Zomato or some other delivery agent could deliver at home. So people are looking at that. Work from home is an option. And to call it a home is actually a misnomer. Idea is to work from anywhere. Somehow work from home to an entrepreneur like me, traditional entrepreneur like me, gives a Sunday experience.
Yeah. You're right. You're right.
It's also about changing the mindset.
You're right. So I hear you, and then very rightly said that selectively it is happening, and it's not work from here. It's basically carrying your work with you. So very true from MSME perspective also. And since the time does not permit us to go ahead, But it was wonderful session, hearing perspective from all of you. And thanks a lot for sharing your views and perspective. I'm sure the audience will get benefited. I'm sure people would have heard, different perspectives from different industry vertical. And the icing on the cake was MSME. Why? Because this is an area which generally, we skip it off. So thanks once again. Thanks a lot. And it was wonderful talking to you. And take care.